This week we're talking about habits. The topic actually came from Hey Nexter. The topic came from one of my regular viewers, Steve. So I'm gonna wait a sec, see if he joins, because I just want to say thanks to him for this good topic. He actually started out by, hey Mandy, he started out by suggesting bad habits, because as creatives we probably have a lot of bad habits. But then I started thinking about habits generally, and I thought maybe this conversation isn't about bad habits, because otherwise it will become a you should do this. Maybe it's more about the concept of habits, or the distinction of habits themselves. So that's kind of where that was the genesis of this week's conversation. Hey Carly, Amber, you made it. All right, so Steve's not here just yet, so I'm sure he'll join at some point. So I'm gonna start. So as I was basically just saying, habits are something that I think people think they consciously adopt, but they're actually just something we're doing all the time. Sometimes we're doing them consciously, sometimes we're doing them unconsciously, but we are constantly we live a habitual life, and we're also living in the results of the habits we formed. Hey Emma, how's it going? So every behavior that you repeat is just a habit that you formed, and it's something that's you've become unconscious to. So for example, I trained myself to put my door keys on a ledge just inside my front door, because I was just always having this last minute panic, 10 minutes of like, where are my keys, looking down the sofa, looking in all the different handbags that I've used, a different handbag, you know what I mean? So like to just end that, because it was getting really tedious, I was just like, let me just put my keys in the same place every day. And so that becomes an unconscious thing, is that like I don't even think, where should I put my keys? As soon as I walk through the door, I put them down. That's a good habit, I suppose, if we're going to label something good or bad. But then there's so many other habits that we take on, and it's the same mechanism as to whether that a habit feeds us or it takes from us. It's all the same process. So that's what I wanted to talk about, that phenomenon of habit, because rather than being like, these are the bad habits, these are the good habits, there's just habits, there's habitual living. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Let me say hello to some people. Ryan's here, Gwynnifer, Julian, and Griffos Retro Gaming has joined. Welcome. And Ryan says, great to see you all you lovely folks, which is very nice. So there is this thing of habit, because we think of habits as things like smoking, but actually habits can be ways of thinking, ways of being. Like, you can be habitually angry when you see a certain type of stimulus or something, or you can be habitually self-conscious when you are in a certain environment, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not just about actions. It can be, you can have habitual ways of being. And the reason that we continue to do them, especially the habits that don't feed us, is because, we're creating a chemical hormonal response within us, like a reward thing that comes associated with that habit. So if you take smoking, for example, you're probably setting off all these sort of like pleasure hormones, which makes you which creates this sort of peak and trough experience that makes you want to have another cigarette. Well, guess what? You're probably doing the same thing with all those other little habits that you don't think of as habits, like ways of being or ways that you are with your creativity that aren't necessarily serving you. So you're sort of living at the effect of those habits, but you're unconscious of the process behind them and what's creating them. Steve started with bad habits, and I get where he's coming from, because there are some habits, I think, that creatives take on that we've become unconscious to, that aren't feeding us. So I'm going to get to those later on, but I just wanted to talk a little bit, like I say, about the concept of habits. There are some habits that are kind of I was reading an article about this before I started, and it referred to them as mild, and and I think that's a nice word to use to describe things that actually, if you became aware of them, you could probably stop. But there's a power dynamic with you and your habits that some aren't as easy to override. Again, I think smoking is just a really good example because there's a physical addiction to it as well as a sort of a mental one. And so it takes more energy to sometimes override that power dynamic that you've created with this habit. First of all, you've got to see it. So that's the big hurdle in the first place, is seeing that you're even in an habitual, or what the habit is and what the cost of it is. And then secondly, it's like, do you have the power to override it? So it's kind of an interesting dance and a process to change things. So while we're speaking, it would be great if you just had to think if there's things in your creative life that you're thinking, either that you want to share habits that you generated for yourself, that you kind of trained yourself to adopt this new habit, or that there's a habit that you're like, I don't know how to let this thing go, I want to transform it. And just like whatever you're willing to share, don't feel like you have to share things that are like deeply personal, but it'd be interesting to see what, and specifically in relation to creativity, I've got some thoughts that I've had that I'll come to later and talk about other ways that one can be with them. But I'd be interested to hear from you guys, like what you might be wrestling with in that sort of domain. Let me say hello to some folks. So lucky number 32 and J 071267. I wonder if that's your date of birth. Anyway, I draw people naked. That's Tonya, right? And Nick, Eddie, King Kong, Hattie, and Ian have joined. Hey guys, how's it going? Okay, so there's this like power thing going on with these habits because it's very tempting for people when you know sometimes when you express to someone, God, I just can't stop doing this thing, and people go, why don't you just stop? And it's like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Thanks. There's a power dynamic, and that's why sometimes it's hard to stop this thing or to start something new. So you want to take yourself, we'll talk about how that can be transformed, and about giving yourself a little bit of space and a bit of credit and a bit of forgiveness so that you can start that process and not make it some other thing that you can self-flagellate about. So like I said, there's no good habits. I don't think of them as terms of good habits and bad habits. There's just habits that you want to catch and habits that you want to cultivate. And I think that's probably a little bit of a freer way of looking at it, so you're not giving yourself a hard time, because that's just another habit on top of all the other habits. Is, oh, I've screwed up, so I'm gonna beat myself up about this. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. That's just a habit that you've decided to do. So I think the first place to start is getting the cost of the habit that you want to identifying first of all the habit that you want to transform. So there might be so say for example, I think procrastination is a good one, because I think that's something that people do habitually. So if you've identified that procrastination is just like, I am not I need to do something about this, I think the first place to go is just to identify that is something that you want to change. And objectivity in this is really useful, because the more emotion you have in it, the harder it's going to be, because probably the emotion's going to be something where you're giving yourself a hard time. So just, if you can, remain objective about it and just go, right, procrastination, what's the cost of it? So what are you seeing in your life that as a result of procrastination you don't have, or as a result of procrastination you don't have, or as a result of procrastination you have something that you don't want? Does that make sense? Hi Tom and Hannison H22, hello. So identify those things. Basically, what's the cost? So if you're procrastinating, that means that probably some project that you're trying to get off the ground is not happening, because you're doing your tax returns and you're going shopping and you're tidying up your sock drawer. Just identify what the cost is, and again, remain objective, because what could happen when you identify the cost is that you suddenly get really sad about and regretful about the fact that this hasn't happened because of your procrastination or whatever habit it is that you've developed. Tom says, I was going to write a joke about procrastination then, and I thought, now I'll leave it till tomorrow. Very good. So, um, so I think that the next port of call is forgiveness. Forgive yourself. Sound and picture don't match. Okay, yeah, that's. I mean, that's a little anomaly of Instagram stories and such like. I think, but I think the words are more important. Don't worry about what the pictures are doing. I'm not going to be doing anything that will particularly like you'll need to see. So the word, just close your eyes and follow the words. Alistair 10, hello. So forgive yourself for whatever it is that the habit that you've created, because the last thing you need on top of everything else is to be feeling bad about the situation as well. So just objectivity is going to be your best friend in all of this, and you're going to slip back into having an emotional, maybe a negative emotional response to it, but just keep pulling yourself back to, I'm going to do something about this at some point in the future. If you continue, you may have transformed it. So maybe focus more on that rather than what's wrong and giving yourself a hard time about it in the present. Martha has joined as well. Hi. And Gwyneth, hello. She says, I spend way too much time on Instagram just scrolling or watching YouTube. So I unfollowed unnecessary pages, but most of the time I don't even notice when I procrastinate. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. The starting place might be, rather than if you don't, because it's become unconscious, you might not actually be aware of what the habit is. So the starting point is, if you are having an experience that something is that you want to change or transform, then that might be the thread that you have to pull to figure out, well, why isn't this thing happening in the way that I would like it to? And then start to really have an inquiry into yourself and say, all right, what habits, what things am I doing that are getting in the way of that? And then a habit might start to reveal itself, because we have become unconscious to the way we are, and therefore some of the actions that come out of the way we are. And it's only when you get into a self-inquiry that you start to see, I'm doing this thing, or I am being this particular way, but I don't actually have to be that way because so-and-so isn't. And it's not about comparing, we'll come to that, but it's about just really seeing that how one assumes that our way of being is the way to be, when actually it's a choice that we are making, but we're just not conscious of the fact that we're choosing that. So if everything's fine, then obviously this conversation is irrelevant. This is a conversation specifically for people that feel like there's something in their creative life that is not working, and getting underneath it from the angle of habits, to see if there's a way of transforming that and changing something and creating something that you want, or letting go of something that you don't want. Oh, okay. So Carly says her sound and pictures is matching, so it might be happening at someone's end and not my end if it's matching for Carly. Okay. Jay says, and we're off with the procrastination jokes. Okay. And Citizen Joke says, Joaquim says, I eat when I get a really good idea. Don't know why, but it's really distracting. There you go. There's a habit and there's an association. So it's almost like, you're creating this link of pleasure, because obviously food is pleasurable, between the good idea and the food. But then it sounds like it's getting in the way of the idea really getting to get fully expressed, because you're into eating. You're now onto eating rather than like exploring the idea or something. I don't know. Dory D Dog has joined. Welcome. And Amber says, I had a habit of thinking negatively, thinking it would push me to do better. I've begun to catch those negative thoughts and give them a positive charge, which has pushed me so much more positively. Yeah, I mean, and essentially, self-flagellation, which is one of the things that I'll come to as a habit of creative people. It is one motivation. So I'm not saying don't do it, never do that, it's wrong, but it's gonna engender quite a negative experience, isn't it? Because if you've got this hound on your back that you've created as well, like giving you constant hassle, like, why haven't you done such and such, and you're useless, you need to get, whatever the conversation was, it will get you to the promised land, but that's going to be a lot harder on your being than just if you were just like, you got this, girl, you can do this. So Danny3693 has joined, and Joachim says exactly. So choose your habit. Which habit do you want to transform, and be really specific. Be as specific as you possibly can. So for example, going back to the procrastination thing, if you find that it shows up at a particular time or in a particular way, then get specific about the habit that you want to break. It might be that you want to create a situation where you're more disciplined in terms of how you use your time, or give you I don't know, because I know what my habits are, but so I don't want to sort of project what the problem is with procrastination onto somebody else. So I might just leave you guys to just think theoretically about this, about your own habits, rather than me creating one, creating a hypothetical. Chase C727Y has joined. Hello. So get really specific. Okay, so I know. All right, I'll use a real one for me, the habit with the keys, because losing my keys was creating, it wasn't just about sort of misplacing my keys. It was more that as I was leaving the house, I was creating this energy of panic and of making myself late. And I identify myself as somebody that is on time. I don't think I'm as on time all the time as I think I am, but I do endeavor to be on time for things. And so this thing about losing the keys, it wasn't a small thing. It wasn't just a small matter of like, where are my keys? Oh, there they are, good. It was about sort of making a little lifestyle change so that when I leave the house, I feel relaxed about where I'm going. Because then you're getting in a car and driving or something. You don't want to be in this state of, oh, I'm running late, and because that's how accidents happen and all the rest of it. So it was a bigger deal than just the keys. And so I chose that habit to transform, and made choices about what I'm going to do about that. The next part of the process, I would say, I mean, this is me just coming up with ideas. So you're picking. So please feel free to cherry pick and choose which parts of the process work for you, because some might not be relevant to the thing that you're considering. Is identify what your triggers are. So when it comes to, say, examples around food, the trigger is obviously most of the time seeing the food. So if you're predisposed to a particular type of snacking, then if you're exposed to those things that you like to eat, then you're more likely to want them or see adverts for them or whatever. Paul, hello. So I used to have a real issue with snacking, because I'm sitting at a desk a lot of the time, like writing. I would just sit there munching on, like, crisps are like, they're my Waterloo, my downfall. So whenever I went food shopping, I would always treat myself and just buy a couple of bags. And I'd buy some popcorn. I like popcorn too. And so I would have those, and I had no real, obviously buying the big bags as well. So I had no real discipline around, measuring them out over the course of the week. I would just demolish those bags of crisps or popcorn like very quickly. And so I realized that the only way that I can transform this habit, because it was starting to, it's a compromise, because I'm trying to eat healthily on the one hand, and I'm making all these, like, I really enjoy cooking whole food meals and cooking from scratch, and then I'm eating, like, half a bag of kettle chips, which, God, if you look at the ingredients, it doesn't matter. Who cares whether they're hand cooked? They are so fatty and so salty. So it was a total disconnect between what I was preparing for myself and then what I was snacking on in between those meals. Tons of calories in that stuff as well. Anyways, but that's another point. I realised that cheese and onion McCoys, Ian, crisps. I mean, they're a nightmare. So I realised that I have to change, I've put these 2 points, but they're really the same thing. Change your circumstances and identify the trigger. I realised that if I open the cupboard and see that stuff in there, I am gonna eat it. There's no two ways about it. So I had to change my circumstances, and it was drastic. I just had to stop buying it because I knew that I had no self-control over it. Where I actually started was I tried to change the snack. So I used to buy a lot of nuts, and then I can't remember what they're called, like those tortilla chips or something. And then I looked on the ingredients, and they're kind of fatty too. So I just went straight to just stop buying it. And if you're serious about something, then sometimes the circumstances that you have to change have to be as dramatic as just completely cut off your exposure to it, because I never want snacks enough to leave the house to go and get them. But if they're there and it means just, you know, slobbing through to the kitchen to get them, of course that's what I'm going to do. And I find it very difficult to just have a quarter of a bag or something, or, you know, whatever. So sometimes that's what's got to be done, is take away the stimulus that makes you think about or want to do the habit, or not do sometimes, as like in the case of procrastination, you know, to do the thing that you're thinking about. And that takes a conscious, you got to consciously choose to do that. So this stuff isn't going to happen by chance, because you have to bring consciousness to something that has become unconscious to be able to change it. Otherwise it's just going to continue the same, because it's unconscious. You're not, it's just a process happening. It's almost happening in the background. It's like, you know, background, you know, in your phone or whatever, you've got apps happening in the background. Well, that's what your habits are. And if you want to change them, you have to consciously bring them to the fore and transform those things. Steve, hi, welcome. So we're just getting into you know, what the process might be for transforming habits, and I'm sort of pulling at examples you know, from my life, one's to do with snacking, one's to do with losing my keys all the time, but use whatever yours is. And I also said thanks as well for bringing up this this topic. I changed it to habits so that it wouldn't just be about me telling you what to do, but trying to transform the distinction that we might have of habits, i.e. it's just, there's not good habits and bad habits. There is just this process called habits that human beings have for some reason. Who knows what it is. So again, I've noted here, make it an easy win. So that's all part of that same wheelhouse of, you know, removing the triggers, changing your circumstances, making it an easy win. By me not buying the snacks, I'm giving myself an easier win. If they're not there, obviously I'm not going to eat them. Now, an easy win, changing circumstances for different habits will look different and might be harder, might actually be harder to create. It might literally come down to a matter of willpower or something like that, or self-discipline. So I can't say for sure that this is going to be applicable to every situation or every habit that you're thinking that you would like to work on or change, but that is, just have that in your toolkit. I think a routine is another one, that this is just what happens. So for example, if you wanted to change your habit of not working out to becoming a person that works out 3 times a week, you know, change your circumstances so it's as easy as possible. I wanted to do that, and so instead of driving to a gym or having to go to a gym, I created the circumstances so that I could work out at home. I tried to make it as easy a win as possible. I've got, you know, weights, and I've got those resistance bands and things like that, so that I can literally tumble out of bed and go and do this, so that there's no excuse. It's like, remember last week we were talking about make it so easy that it would be embarrassing not to do it. Well, it's kind of like that. It's like I've got a bit of space in a spare room, got it all set up. It's almost easier to just do it, just get it done, than to not do it. So that becomes the routine. And I know, again, in terms of making it an easy win, I know that if I work out first thing in the morning, I know I'll get it done, and then I can enjoy the rest of the day. Whereas I know the times when I've worked out in the evening or in the afternoon, it sort of hangs over my head, or I create this experience of it hanging over my head during the day, and I sort of have a little bit of anxiety and a sort of not looking forward to it. Whereas And it also gets me out of bed quicker, because I know, oh God, once I get out of bed, I got to go and do this thing. Just get it done, and then it's done for the rest of the day. So whatever you need to do to create the conditions that make you that allow you to do this thing, and make it into a routine. Make it happens every whatever frequency or regularity you need it to happen, and it happens every day, or I do this every Monday, or every night I meditate, or whatever it is. It just is the way it is, and one has to learn to start to keep your words to yourself. Because I was just on this program a little while ago, which I ended up withdrawing from. Lisa was on it with me. It's a leadership program with Landmark. I liked the leadership part of it, but it involved having to have a lot of conversations about their work, and I wasn't quite ready to do that. But one of the trainings or whatever, or insights that I got from them that I really appreciated was this issue of integrity. And I thought that integrity was about always keeping your word, doing it whatever, but but actually, even if it was injurious to you, and actually that's not what integrity is. It's about, well, the way they describe it is leaving a situation whole and complete. So I think it is about honouring your word. That's how they described it, and leaving a situation whole and complete. So honouring your word means that you don't have to keep your word if it's going to hurt you or somebody else, but doing your very best to, and when you can't, making good on that. And one guy in the program shared that he was very good at keeping his word to other people, but he was constantly negotiating with himself. So I think one of the other things about transforming a habit is that you've got to start to really hear so I'm losing my voice. I can feel a bit of a cold coming on, which is really annoying. Anyways, but yeah, you got to start to hear or catch yourself in the process of having those little negotiations with yourself. Well, I was really good today, so I won't work out because, I'm a bit tired and I want to have I want to watch Lost. I'm still watching Lost. Or, whatever what internal negotiations you're constantly having. Now, that isn't to say that sometimes plans need to change, but you really got to be clear with yourself about, is this plan changing because the plan doesn't work? Or this part of the plan doesn't work? Or is it changing because you're negotiating your way out of doing what you said you would do for yourself? Because ultimately, you're letting down your future self. So fall in love with that person. And this has come up before as well in our conversations. Be in love with that future person. Honor the person that made the decision that this was going to be the right thing for you. And be in love with the person who's going to benefit from it. Because I think we forget those two guys because we're too busy in our, I don't feel like it. So remember those two people, because they had, the one who created it had a different intent for you than just being in this habit. They wanted something bigger for you. That's why they were trying to, create the possibility of you getting out of it. So listen to them, remember them. You know what I mean? Like, don't forget that they got your interests at heart. I overheard someone having a conversation about something yesterday, and it was to do with somebody saying that they weren't able to do something that they said they would do. And this person, who's kind of like a coach and a facilitator, was saying that, very often people track their emotions in terms of deciding what they're going to do or not do. Instead, they should be tracking their word. And it really isn't about do it regardless, do it even if it hurts yourself, even if it compromises you. It's really about being a person of integrity. I said I would do it, therefore I'm going to do it. Because feelings change. You can, and often when you start doing something, I don't know if you guys find this, but I find it all the time, is like you don't feel like doing it when you start. Like, I don't feel like working out when I start. I'm sort of like a sulky child sort of throwing herself around. So I time a 7-minute warm up because I know that my body's aching. I've literally just got out of bed anyway, so it's probably a good idea to let my body warm up a little bit. But I sort of emotionally, I'm not really there. But by the end of it, I'm going for it and I'm creating new exercises for me to... inspiration follows. We said this last week. Inspiration follows. So don't necessarily... feelings aren't necessarily as reliable as we think. And I think feelings are different from a gut instinct, because I think, because I've been wondering about this, and actually I'm just spitballing this idea just out now, but I think the gut instinct is more of an energetic perception thing, rather than feelings are chemicals that get what's the word, they get interpreted by the mind. I think that's a totally different thing. And that's why I think we shouldn't necessarily... They're not reliable reporters. Your feelings are basically the sun. And your word is, the Guardian and the Times. See, I picked a left and a right one, so no one can complain. So don't necessarily take your feelings as the best indicator of what's so and what needs to be done. That's all I'll say about that. Tonya says, I sometimes chat with my future self in the sauna and she's so chill. Yeah, because she knows it all worked out. That's brilliant though. Maybe that's something that we should all do is, hey, future self, does it work out? And they'll always go, yeah, it worked out. Always. Without a doubt, that's always got to be the answer. Sly One has joined. Hello. And okay, so where are we? Okay, so we're basically trying to create a win by having routine, changing circumstances, identifying triggers. And I think I like this point. I liked when it came up because it reminded me of a couple of other things that I'll share as well. Enroll others. So, often when people are saying about, say, you want to get a running sort of regime going, they say run with somebody else. And that's what that does, is it creates a commitment to somebody outside of yourself. So even if you are having these little negotiations with yourself, you're committed to somebody else. And so it's harder to let somebody down and go, oh, I'm not coming because the dog or my life. It's a lot harder to do that when you've committed to somebody else. But if it's just you can go, oh, the dog and my life, and you stay in bed. So enroll others. And actually, and the other thing that I thought was interesting that I wanted to share as well is declaring these things. I will change this. I'm gonna be this. Declaring it out loud. Tell me just say yes if this happens to you. Is when you declare stuff out loud, you suddenly, the universe almost like gives you all these challenges and undermines you. Like, say you'd say, right, I'm going to go veggie. Next thing, you get invited to like the best steakhouse or something by a group of friends or something. Or if you say, I'm going to work out every day, and the next day you sort of, I don't know, you twist an ankle or something. Do you know what I mean? It seems like the universe almost conspires. And I always thought the universe was telling you, ha, you idiot, you can't do it. The universe, when you declare it, the universe isn't going, ha, you idiot. The universe is going, are you serious? Then let me help you. Let me test that. So that, because calm seas don't make good sailors. You need the rough. You need the test to be able to overcome it, to be able to build that strength. So declare it. Lean into that. Lean into dance with the universe and go on, test me. I'm going to declare it. I'm going to run 3 times a week. Now test me. Now give me a work deadline that means that's going to be that's going to be difficult, and see how committed I really am. Because if I make that work commitment work around my running, that will give me the strength and give me the new neural pathways to say this can be done. I am doing this. This is becoming my new habit. I am D-Seal. D-Seal. Welcome. I always say welcome, don't I? But you are. Okay, so enroll others and declare it. Because then you'll see how serious you are about changing this habit, is when you declare it to the universe. There is you're welcome. Says I am D-Seal. So there is a thing as well where it will feel weird, and you'll be very conscious of the new habit or whatever that you're trying to create, and it might not kind of go the way that you think it's going to go. So you're being consciously aware of it is going to feel clunky and weird, but just be patient with it. That it is gonna, if you continue with this, the way that the human mind is constructed, it can only become second nature. It is an inevitability that it will become second nature, and that is a joy. And that's the place that you want to get to with this new habit, is to create a person who does not procrastinate as second nature, as a person, to create a person who knows where to put their keys whenever they walk through the door as second nature. A person who doesn't snack and is mindful of their eating habits as second nature. So yes, it is clunky and weird at first. And why am I doing this? You're going to have that experience a lot of time. Oh, it was just easy the way it was. Well, fine, go back to the way it was. It's not like there's a right and a wrong about this. It's just, if you're declaring to yourself that, look, there's something in my life I want to change, and this is what's going to happen. And this is going to be a little bump in the road on the way there. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. So, then at some point, once you're on the road, once you're on the way, because I think you have to do this once you're on the way, not at the beginning, you want to start to have a little inquiry as to why. Because this is the thing I think about, the thing that's missing in addiction conversations and weight loss conversations and stuff like that, is that people, if somebody's on a weight loss program, it's very easy to find someone that will help you work out, that will, create a diet plan. There's clubs and it's huge global organizations that are set up to, support people doing that. But the why this thing even exists, why this habit is in your life, will really get under. That's like pulling the roots out, because if you have an addiction to food, for example. You go on a diet, you're dealing with the symptoms. If you get that your food is a comfort and replace the love that you never had as a child, I don't know. Okay, say for example, if you can get underneath that, then you won't feel the need to get pulled back at any point into using food to replace love. And even if you do, you'll go, oh, that's what I'm doing. And it's much easier to not succumb to that habit. So it's, and I think you need to be on the process of creating your new routine, creating your new habit before you start to look at that, because that will be the fuel that will motivate you to continue and to really make a difference. Is the why. It's because you can give an addict some sort of substitute drug, great, okay, but now they're on something else anyways, or now they're going to start. I knew someone who previously was a heroin addict who had hundreds of pairs of shoes, not hundreds but tens of pairs of shoes, because she'd become addicted to that, because they hadn't got underneath why she had this habit, had this addiction, which is an extreme form of a habit, I guess, in some ways. Steve, that's a really good point about why the habit exists. That's my personal work for this week. Yeah, because you mentioned you were in something personally which made you bring up habits as a topic to discuss. So yeah, you want to get underneath why, because even a little thing like me and my keys is that why am I like that is because I rush a lot. And why am I rushing? Because I'm constantly in this state of needing to do. So then when I can catch myself in this state of constantly needing to be in a state of doing, I can just calm down and then be consciously aware of making sure I've got enough time for everything and doing things fully, because I'm constantly rushing and throwing things around, and it takes a couple of weeks. My apartment's a mess because I'd never put things back where they're meant to be or whatever. It takes a while for me to, and then I go, oh, I hate the way everything's all messy, and then I start again. I start to tidy up and then start the whole process again. So what was my point? So getting underneath the why, even of the most mild habit. I used that term at the beginning. It can really illuminate something and help fuel your success at transforming it. And also another way that you might be able to generate some success or to fuel the success is to reward yourself when you with these small achievements. And I think we've talked about that before, is like creating a process whereby you get rewarded when you make achievements, and you can have little milestones along the way. If, for example, you were doing weight loss, you could have a cheat day at some point, just to say reward yourself for having done so well. If you've been working out for a month, have a cheat day at the end of that month, and then there's no there's no problem with having that, and you're free to do that. I worked with an actor a couple of years ago who just completely almost completely cut out carbohydrates, just barely ate any carbs, just so healthy. He said he used to be quite a big person and he felt like it was very difficult for him to manage his weight, so he got himself down to whatever weight it was, and he looked great, and he's an older gentleman as well. And then he has this day with his daughter, which he gives it this like special name, that they have this one day a month, I think it is, one day a month, where they just go and indulge chips and pasta and whatever it is. They eat all the carbs they want to eat, and that is his strict discipline, and they love it. And it means that he's all the effort and all the sort of difficulty, as it were, of managing his diet through the whole month. There's this lovely reward at the end of it, and he just sticks to that. He keeps his integrity. That's his word. Keeps his word to himself and to his daughter, because he's enrolled somebody else. So it's almost perfect. It's a perfect way of transforming the habit he had before in terms of his relationship with food. Analysing yourself can solve almost every problem, I guess, Gwyneth said. Yeah, and I think, but analysing can also become a habit. Like, you can get yourself caught up in self-analysis rather than being of action. So yeah, it can make a difference. But really, because I was sort of considering this week, what does it take to be a great leader? And I was coming up with all these things. I was like, oh my God, there's so much you have to do. And then I realised a lot of it, most of it, probably all of it, comes down to just being present. And ultimately, I think that's how you resolve a lot of issues, is just being present. And so, because when you're present, you're not subject to the things of the past. So, say for example, that hypothetical I said about the person who's addicted to food because they were replacing love they never had. If you're present in the moment, you're not living out of that past paradigm, that past way of being, of that love that never was, and therefore the food is going to help. You're completely in the present and know that I'm eating food because it's enjoyable to my taste buds and because I need it. I'm hungry. And food, we need food to survive rather than we need it to replace love. So being present, probably, that is the one thing that I would undeniably say, yes, that's the thing that will help you transform. Because if you're present, then you're still aware of what the mind is up to, but you've got a little bit of objectivity. Objectivity was the thing I mentioned probably as being the most useful component. Like up top is like, if you can have this objective relationship with all of this, with your being, with yourself, with your habits, then it's going to be a lot easier to transform than if you identified them. But I love food, but I'm in a hurry. I haven't got time to figure out where to put my kid, or whatever it is. So then let's talk about some habits that we have that creatives might have that could do with maybe a bit of transformation. These are ones that I came up with, but if you've got ones that you want me to have a look at, or that you've got some thoughts on, please feel free to chip in. Like I just brainstormed some ideas, but this isn't a definitive list. Basically, that's what I'm saying. So I think comparing is a habit that So these obviously are habits that one would want to transform. They're not the ones that we want to cultivate. These are the sort of what you might call negative habits that creatives might have. So comparing ourselves to other creatives is a habit that I think a lot of creatives have. So I'm going to throw out a few ideas about how these might be transformed. So rather than we can't stop ourselves seeing what our peers are up to, and you don't want to ignore your peers, because you want to be able to be part of your industry or be aware of what your peers are doing. But rather than trying to avoid them, I would say lean into observing your peers, but use it as training, and maybe somehow find a way to remind yourself of your unique traits, because there's only one you. Whatever, I don't know why, but I've got artists in my head, because I feel like, as in painters, I feel like that must be quite hard for painters. Like, if you don't feel like your own style is original, or that person's doing so well, and how come they're in that gallery, or whatever, it must be really, really difficult. I mean, it's difficult for all creatives, but maybe one can use observing other artists in whatever field you're in as a form of training. And then also remind yourself how unique you are, and how you're the only person that can create what you can create, even if it's sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So remind yourself how unique what you do is. Yeah, I think that's the end of the thought, actually. Remind yourself how unique what you do is, because only one person can do what you do. Oh, that was it. Especially if you are connected to your authenticity. And comparing can cause people not to be authentic. John has joined. Hi. And Tonya says, yes, it is. Painters' hardest challenge, not to compare. Cool. Okay. Yeah, because I really had a strong sort of image of painters. I mean, actors do it too, and stand-ups, and how come that person's got that, and all. We're all up to it. But reminding ourselves how unique what we are is, and staying connected to our authenticity, because nobody can be us, especially when we're in the presence of our own authenticity. If we're copying, we're already a dud. We're already a fake, as it were. So we'll come to copying, but if we're comparing and saying, for some reason I should be like that, or why have they got what we're taking our attention off ourselves and putting it on somewhere, something, someone that we have no control or dominion over anyways. So it's a waste of our attention and energy, when we could be focusing on our own creativity and getting connected with our own authenticity. So there's not going to be specific do this, do that, because I'm trying to keep it broad enough that it can be applicable to everyone, because I think we all to different degrees do all of these things. Jealousy, which kind of comes off the comparing thing. Again, it's very difficult, because you're seeing somebody else having something that you feel that you want for yourself. And yeah, and that can be a challenge. So I would say celebrate their successes. Start to lean. It all seems to be about leaning in. Actually, celebrate the successes of somebody that you feel like you're jealous of, and enroll yourself in their success, because their success doesn't take anything from you. That's something that that's a mindset that I've had to sort of I constantly have to remind myself of. If that person's winning, it doesn't mean that I'm losing. And also, this, again, I lost my train of thought before, but this is what I was going to say, is that you're comparing a different part of their journey, and assuming that it's the same part of, you're comparing your part of the journey with their part of the journey, assuming that you're in the same place, and you're not. Who knows where they've been through? Who knows what part of their track they're on? So to compare is almost ridiculous. It's like comparing. It's the example I used before is like comparing the scoreline of a soccer match to a rugby match. It's like rugby scorelines can be like 2019. And you know, soccer players are, oh God, they've scored so many goals. They're so much better at it than we are. No, they're playing a different game. And that's the same principle when you're comparing yourself and feeling jealous of somebody else. You don't know what game they're playing. You don't know what they're wanting, what they're trying to achieve. So just lean in and just celebrate their success. And also, celebrating someone's success and being pleased for them is a higher vibration. Again, all of these, I think, as well, leaning in and raising your vibration. So allow yourself to vibrate at a higher frequency than jealousy by celebrating their success. I had a comedian friend of mine, like years ago. He would always talk about how if I see someone doing well, I'm going to congratulate them. I'm going to go out of my way to say, well done, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you lying. You don't even believe that. But now in hindsight, I realise what a smart move that was, because he was creating a habit of being happy for other people rather than, you know, and overturning that habit of being jealous of them and not wanting them to have the success, or wanting it for himself rather than them, or whatever it was that was going on previously. So even if he was faking it, he was faking it till he makes it. He was faking it until it becomes his new habit to override this jealousy that just wasn't working for him. Steve says that's an interesting paradox, because sometimes we need to take the attention off ourselves. Yes, that's right. But taking your attention off yourself and putting it on somebody else in a way that is demeaning to you is actually still having the attention on yourself. It's the same thing. Having your attention not on yourself is about being in the world and knowing that you are taken care of in the process of taking care of the world. That's what having your attention off yourself really is. You know, having your attention on somebody else in that way, where it's like, why have they got that, or why are they doing that, or how come that's basically still having attention on yourself. And Ian says there is also an element of, well, if they can do it, so can I. Word. So that's the other thing I was going to say, is that being in the presence of somebody else, you might experience jealousy, or you could remind yourself that you are in the presence of success, and that means it's close. You only see what's possible. You only see in the world what's possible in you. So if you're witnessing success, it means it's on its way to you. And you have to remember that. Procrastination. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because we have talked about it at length. But plan. That's all I can say about that. Plan. If you have a deadline and you have a plan, then you keep your word. And the plan gives you the containment to let you know when all your little procrastination things that you do isn't going to work. Because that's the problem with procrastination, is because you've got a plan within a deadline. Because I think how people get themselves caught up with procrastination is that they have a final deadline, but they don't have micro ones along the way. So if you know you're predisposed towards procrastination, create micro deadlines. So rather than I will finish my dissertation or whatever it is that you're doing in 3 months' time, say after week 3, I will have finished this section and written 10,000 words. After week 6, I will have done da 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 da. Because, anyway. That's what's there, right? The plan gives you containment. And the plan can change, but at least you're consciously aware of tracking your progress. Copying other artists, copying what other people are doing. You tend to copy because you don't value your own authenticity. You don't think you're enough, and you're probably looking for some quick fix of like, how can I get what they have? I'll copy them. Well, again, lean into it, but don't treat the copying like a training. So, because I feel like when you're starting, especially when you're starting out as an artist, sometimes you do have to copy to find your way. Like I found with filmmaking, I was recreating a lot of things that I'd already seen in other films. So I would, and had I continued, I would have then found my own authentic expression as a filmmaker. So there's nothing wrong with copying as such, as long as you're not holding on to it as like, this is the solution. If I do what so-and-so's doing, then I will have what so-and-so's got. It might not work like that, because you're a different, unique expression. And the further away you get from your own unique creative expression, the more you're lessening your work and your contribution. And Bray Jams has joined, and Amber says, oh, witnessing success. I dig that. I'm going to hold on to that. Excellent. And Steve says, that's exactly how I did my dissertation. I committed myself to writing a chapter a week, and it was very focused and liberating. And also, yeah, if you give, and also very important, I keep saying this, always put in your, maybe a little bit of being of service. Definitely rest. That is an important part of the plan. Mr. Slaz 1982 and Farm Phil has joined, or Phil Farmer, I don't know. And Steve says, you're defining the difference between being inspired by and plagiarizing. Cool. Yeah, cool. Look, you found a nice succinct way of saying it. Justifying and playing the victim. I think that's another habit of creatives. Basically, I think I've listed this one twice, but I'm going to say basically take responsibility. Take responsibility for the things that for the things that are in your control. Because a lot of times I go onto like forums for creatives and stuff, and there is so much complaining. The forum is supposed to be about, say for example, about getting help or advice, and so many times people just use them to just complain. Complaining in itself is not a problem, but complaining is more moaning about something without ever taking action. And that's very different from pointing out something that's wrong and needs to change, and enrolling people in getting on board and changing them. So really catch yourself in that process. And that, you know, creators do it a lot. Catch yourself in that process. Take responsibility for what is yours. Let go of what is not yours, because you can't control it. And don't indulge that victimhood, because it's a low vibration as well. Laziness I came up with as a thing, but I think laziness is a really interesting thing, because really I think the way to transform laziness is really to just get in touch with what's really important. Because I tell you something, people sometimes describe themselves as lazy or call other people lazy, but if there was a fire, that lazy person would, but a lazy person who smells smoke coming from downstairs isn't like, oh God, I can't be bothered to go down and see what the problem is. God, I hope someone else puts the fire out. They're galvanized because that's what's important in that moment. So if you are experiencing laziness, then maybe it's an opportunity. In fact, it is an opportunity to have a look and see what's really important. And if the thing that you're saying that you want to do, but you're being too lazy to sort of take action around, it isn't important, then just let it go. Because I don't really think there's such a thing as a lazy person. I just think there's things that are important to us and things that are not, and the things that aren't, we just don't care about and we don't take action around. So maybe have that distinction for yourself, and it's a nice empowering way of seeing what you might have labelled as laziness. And then on that lack of discipline, I think that really goes along with the procrastination, is plan, honour yourself, and only change your plans if it really isn't working, rather than having that self-negotiation. Self-flagellation. Forgive yourself, because you're a work in progress. And this is something that Lisa, if you're still here, Lisa made present to me a little while ago, is like, I'm trying to get to completed, finished human being. And she's like, no, we're all a work in progress. My coach was saying this to me a couple of weeks ago, is we're all a work in progress. Amber says she's got to go, so I'll see you soon. And so forgive yourself for this, because otherwise self-flagellation, which can be another habit, is just another thing that you're burdening yourself with. Don't give yourself that on top of the thing that you want to transform as well. Embrace beginning again, because we're all an invention. We're all a little invention in our own minds. The only reason that we turn up being who we are every day is because we chose to. So there's this opportunity every day to reinvent this habit, this habitual being that you are, and the habits that this habitual being has. You're not stuck with it in a way that we all think we are. You might not have as much power over it, but the more you work at it, the more power you're going to be able to generate. so that at some point you can transform it and embrace beginning again. There's so many times that I've tried to, create a routine of like exercise in my life, and I've just like, after like 3 months I've had enough. I've tried so many times, and finally now, touch wood, I've got there, that I'm in this process where it's just a part of my life. But that took a really long time. I had to begin again for years. And like giving up smoking, I used to smoke probably about 20-30 a day. It took me probably 20 attempts, some of them lasting months, some of them lasting an afternoon, but it took me that many attempts. But I just continued to begin again. I'm gonna try again, because this habit of who I am is something that I'm choosing to do, and who I am is not a smoker. Let me try that idea. Let me try that habit on as a new way of being. Damn it, I failed again because I went out for drinks with mates or whatever it is. I didn't create circumstances to win. So let me try again a few months later. Let me try again and again and again. And I might fail still. It's been like nearly 10 years, but I could have a cigarette tomorrow, and then I will begin again. I probably will self-flagellate for a little while, but then I will begin again. And so embrace, lean in to beginnings, because they are beautiful, and they're humble, and they're humble, humility inducing, because you're saying, I'm willing to have another go. So who we got here? Oh, Daniel's joined. Hey, Andy Foster, Lisa Waves, Andy Waves, and Steve says, thank you for those words. Fantastic. The beginning, embrace beginning again. And Tommy's joining the conversation. So just a few more little bits, because we're just coming to the end. Hey, Tommy. Entitlement. Yeah, I think this is a big one for, there's a habit of entitlement for creatives sometimes. And really, you want to cultivate this habit of humility. And one of the ways to do that is to remind yourself all the time that being a creative is not a right, it is a privilege. To be a working creative, a professional creative, it's a privilege. And that success is not an entitlement, is a blessing. If your career happens to be blessed with success, you aren't owed that. You were fortunate enough to have that blessing bestowed upon you, and reminding yourself of that will get rid of any entitlement. Because you notice that those established people, like proper, it's like Tom Hanks type level of established, he's not entitled. He talks of gratitude with gratitude and humility every time, and also a sense of wonder and not really sure if he's up to the job, and all this sort of stuff. So yes, that's it basically. So hang on, Jakeem just said, just wanted to say that I have started. First 2 pages written in my horror novel. Fantastic. It's horrible. Brilliant. Congratulations. That's what we said last week. A first draft is meant to be horrible, but it's a really good start. Thank you for the inspiration last week. I'm so happy for you. And Lee Taylor has just joined. We're just about to wrap it up. And Steve says congratulations. Well, say nice one to Jakeem. So in conclusion, because I wrote a little just a summary, I've got the countdown. So observe yourself, be impartial, adopt new habits, and give yourself all the circumstances to win. Train yourself and be aware that it's going to feel clunky at first. Forgive yourself. There's no need to give yourself grief about it. All that you need to do is just begin again. Begin again. And that's it. So listen, as always, thank you for being here. Oh, by the way, Steve, thank you so much for tagging some other people in my little post about this. If you are enjoying these conversations and you feel like there's someone in your network that you think would enjoy them, either direct them to my YouTube channel so they can have a look at some previous ones, or just tag them in that post and say, look, if you're around on Sunday night, join the convo. And Ian says, I think you also have to accept there are days that for whatever reason, the words just aren't there. So true. Forgiveness, just forgive yourself for just not, for how things are. Anyways, listen guys, I've got 3 seconds, so I'm going to sign off.